Ro- Roger, you were right. I had a brain cloud. This movie was so much fun, and the look of it from the beginning to the end, the, the, the beginning scene particularly, we have a special guest here tonight. We have Stephen Goldblatt. He is the cinematographer, director of photography. His most recent films include Julie and Julia and The Help. Will you please welcome Stephen Goldblatt? And as you know, we have a tradition here. We give our filmmakers a golden thumb, cast from Roger's thumb. Thank you. Nate will take it. Oh, by the way, I don't think Nate Cohen, our director of the festival, not of the film. No. Okay, Stephen, will you have a seat, and we'll bring out the moderator for the panel tonight will be Christy Lemire, who is the film critic for the Associated Press, and she was also is the host of Ebert Presents at the Movies. Christy Lemire. And our panelist will be, who came all the way, he is one of the premier film critics in Brazil, Pablo Villaca. Will you join us, please? This is for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chaz. Thanks to all of you for showing up on this amazing opening night. What a gorgeous film to see on this beautiful big screen in this gorgeous building. So thank you all for coming out. Thanks as always to Roger and Chaz and to all you guys. And so I'm just psyched to be here and talk to you. Your career is so amazingly eclectic, and I want to get to all of that, definitely. But one thing that Roger wrote in his review of the film was how he'd never seen anything like this before. You made a lot of movies. Is it like anything you'd ever made before?
Well, some student films, but when I was at the Royal College of Art, London, yes, but we didn't have 40 million to make it with. So.
And it keeps changing, and I'm wondering what sort of challenge that posed to you when you were shooting it, because the look of it keeps changing from one genre to another. It begins as this very bleak, kind of post-apocalyptic, toxic wasteland. It becomes sort of an LA noir eventually. It becomes a very glossy screwball comedy in time. What challenge does that pose to you when you're trying to light it a million different ways?
Not much,
no?
to be honest.
I was all excited about that question. I thought about it.
The different styles is something, if you're a cinematographer, you should be able to do.
Right.
I mean...
But they're all in one place here.
Yeah. Well, so good. So I brought out my bag of tricks, and I had my crew and everything. The thing is that what's difficult is to bring it all into a unity to work with the director. And John Patrick Shanley, who unfortunately can't be with us tonight, he's rehearsing a play in New York, would have been so happy to see the film here, so beautifully projected and with such a great audience. And I'll talk with him tomorrow, but he only got mad at me once when he thought that perhaps I didn't get it, that this film wasn't realistic.
You had a small tiff about that.
Yes, but he set me straight.
And Roger's wanted to show this film here for about a decade now, and wonderfully it's finally here. It's achieved a bit of a cult status over the years. Do you understand that? Do you see that when you watch it again now?
Oh, sure. I haven't seen this on a big screen for almost 20 years.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I've seen it DVD, but to see it as well projected, as beautifully projected, it really is a thrill. I mean, I'm absolutely excited. Yeah.
Now, do you...
I
I'm sorry, pardon me.
I don't know if you mentioned some of the films he did before, but you did a lot of iconic films. I mean, of course, we're here to talk about Joe versus the Volcano, but I grew up on the 80s, and as a child of the 80s, first of all, I have to thank you for Young Sherlock Holmes, which is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, come on, Young Sherlock Holmes. And I believe that was the first film ever to have a completely CGI-created character, which was a breakthrough thing to have in a film. And I know, again, we're here to discuss Joe versus Volcano, but just how was shooting a film with that you had to deal with such a breakthrough technology? You knew that they were going to put a CGI character there, something that had never done before.
Young Sherlock Holmes?
Yes.
Well, to give you an idea, very briefly, of course I do want to talk about Joe, but when we did the CGI character in Young Sherlock Holmes, was with Dennis Muren and ILM, the technology was good enough to recreate a CGI character, but the only negative got scratched, and the technology was not sophisticated enough to fix the scratch. And if you look at it in slow-mo now, you'll see a scratch in the middle of this thing. It was early days, yeah.
Okay, so let's focus on Joe
we can
versus...
talk about whatever. We have all night. You guys have all night, right? You have no place to be.
Yeah.
But you mentioned you hadn't seen this in a couple of decades. Are you noticing different things on this latest viewing that you hadn't seen previously, perhaps?
Yeah, it's better.
Other than that.
No, I mean, seriously, what's happened here is that all the prints are dead, scratched, thrown away, burned. And so what the studio did for this screening for tonight for Roger was they created what's called a digital master, cinema master, and that's taken from our original negative, which has been carefully preserved, thank heaven. And so this digital master has been presented with an enormous projectors, a $250,000 projector called a 4K projector. And in fact, what you're seeing is far better than we ever saw when we made it. Because the film has been preserved. And inherent in film is 4K, 8K, 16K. As the technology improves, it'll look better and better. But what we saw tonight was beyond state of the art.
We were noticing things, little details, little running through lines, little details that are repeated. The staggered path that Tom Hanks takes to work in the morning mirrors the staggered road they go up the volcano, and you noticed it again in the lightning.
Yeah, it appears
bolt
on his wall in his house, and the lightning is crooked too.
It's all the same shape.
So, and the film has a lot of visual rhymes. I guess there are three Danes, three big dogs that appear in the film,
yes.
And they mention souls 3 times.
Yes, yeah.
There are, of course, 3 roles for Meg Ryan. So how did you deal with all those repetitions, all those rhymes throughout the film?
I don't. I honestly have enough to do.
Okay.
To not to maximize my role, but there is nothing you saw here today apart from poor and deliberately poor backgrounds, the sort of cartoony. Everything you see is as it had to be. You can't change it after the fact 20 years ago. There was no digital technology at all. Your exposure had to be correct, and when we made the print at Technicolor, Technicolor, you could control brightness, red, green, blue. That was it. And if you hadn't got it right, there was a distinct limit to how it would look. So I'm proud of it because now everything I shoot is film, but then we go into a digital domain, and then I've got endless flexibility if they give me the money. But on this film, it was how we used to shoot films, how all cinematographers used to shoot movies.
There are a lot of bold choices in the film. I mean, in the beginning, you could see almost expressionistic influence on the set and on the lighting. Sure. When they are out in the sea, and there is this really intense green. How did you did you plan it differently when we were shooting each Meg Ryan character to show her on a different light?
Yes, sure. And of course, Bo Welsh, the wonderful production designer, I live in the art department when I make a movie because that's where the thinking, it's not just the camera, it's not just the lighting, everything's got to be integrated. So we've got to be colleagues, we've got to be married, really, to get this together. So he did conceptual drawings through his department. I would look at them, I'd work out colors. Maybe we did a few little tests, but I love the green fog.
Do you miss the purity of shooting on film the way this was? I mean, do you miss what we were talking about a little bit ago?
No.
Well, it's preferable now?
To tell you the truth, I've
Yeah?
never shot digital.
You never what?
I've never shot a digital film.
Okay. Oh, wow.
No, the help.
Nowadays, that's a privilege.
You know, the help
Yes.
was film. The main reason the help was film was that it was cheaper. See, digital is not cheap. Digital requires a much larger crew, and you've got all data redundancies and trucks full of cables and people going crazy. No, I mean, you film, you put it in a camera, it becomes its own archival thing, and of course, as film is dying, I'm afraid, the cameras are cheaper, and Kodak's virtually giving the stuff away. So I may very well have shot my last film.
Wow. Does that make you sad?
No.
No. It is what it is. Time marches on.
But is there like an authoritative thing when you're shooting film? There is this new documentary called Side by Side that I think Keanu Reeves produced.
Right.
And there's a director of photography who says that when you're shooting film, everybody relies on the director of photography because he's the only person who really knows what's going to show on screen. And digital, everybody's looking and everybody can, say something to the director of photography. Do you miss that power of being the only one who has the film in his mind and can say to the director, it will be all right?
Believe me, this will continue and does continue. It's not just about how it looks. How a film moves and works and cuts frequently is in the director's mind and frequently is in the director of photography's mind. The levels of experience that can come to a film set can be so different. I'm hoping to shoot a film in June of this year, which it's a partnership between two directors, and if it all works out, they have never shot a film together. So I'm going to have two people who've never shot a film, yet are the ostensible directors. And they are, of course, the directors. They've written the script. They have it in their hearts, their minds. But the person who's going to say, you better put the camera over there because it won't cut, is still going to be me, because I have that knowledge, that experience. And then the designers, it doesn't matter if it's digital. It doesn't matter if it's sensitized papyrus. It really is, it's really what is in your mind. When I read a script, if it affects me, I'm looking for the images that come. And the images are created not just by the cinematographer, but by the director, by the makeup artist, by the hair, by the production designer, by visual effects. It's an intensely frustrating collaborative experience, but it is collaborative.
You've worked with Mike Nichols several times. Mentioned collaborations. You did Angels in America with him, and Closer, and Charlie Wilson's War.
Yeah, I worked with Tom Hanks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how much better or how much easier is it when you guys know one another's shorthand, when you do have this frequent collaboration as you talk about?
It's a great help. It's much quicker. And you can trust each other. You know, I mean, I think I quit Angels in America in the third week, and then we worked that out, you know.
Before or after the big Emma Thompson angel flying scene?
Before.
Okay.
And that's fine, that's good. The thing about making films is that when you're making them as a member of the crew, it's about relationships and how you deal with each other. And these things are not easy. I mean, good heavens, to make a film which is a parable, like Joe versus the Volcano, you could say it's a slight little thing, but it's talking about important ideas and feelings. That takes a lot of courage on John Patrick Shanley, the director's part, a great deal of courage, and it meant a great deal to him. And then I'm there with my colleagues to point him in the right direction so he can get what he wants.
You made such an incredibly eclectic array of films. I don't know if you guys IMDb'd our friend here before you came tonight, but the first two Lethal Weapons, a couple of Batmans, The Cotton Club, a couple of musicals. Pardon me?
The Hunger.
Yes, The Hunger with your friend Tony Scott.
Yeah, I went to school with Tony.
Yes.
Which also has a very intense and marked lightning, right? Colors are very intense in the film.
Yeah, I was going through my intense.
You were young and intense.
The Cotton Club.
Yes, Cotton Club, and then of course The Help most recently, and Julie and Juliet. How do you choose what you want to work on?
Well, it's not always my choice. You know?
You can say yes or no.
No, I say no a lot.
Okay.
Until I totally run out of money.
What if you said no to? What if you said no to that you look back now and think,
Quite a few. But I don't want to. But there are definitely films I regret doing, and there are definitely directors who regret hiring me. You know.
well, I got to follow up on that. Do you want to name names?
No, not at all. God, we don't tell tales.
But I'm curious.
Whatever her name is.
No, but I'm curious to know. I just, how do you choose? I mean, you've done every imaginable genre. What has to cry out to you in a project for you to say yes to it?
I read a script, to give you an example. I read a script today, this afternoon. Okay. They have no money. They never will have money. I'll never make money from it. I love the script so much, I'll do it for virtually nothing. I really will, because but that's because I've saved my pennies and I've been doing it for a while. I'm in a position where I can actually do that. When I wasn't, as in, say, Joe versus Volcano, it was luck. And then whether you get on fine with the director. I was shooting Lethal Weapon 2, and I got a phone call to meet with a producer who said, meet me in the valley. This is in Los Angeles. When you finish shooting, we were shooting sort of day, but into the night. I drive, I find this peculiar Italian restaurant. I go in there, and there's one man. The place is empty, and he's on his third martini. And I sat down with him. I won't tell you his name, but he's a famous drunk. And
that could be anybody.
so it's a broad spectrum. And the first thing he looked at me and said, it was like out of Joe. He says, there'll be no anamorphic on this film. The film is shot anamorphic. Mm-hmm. And then I got a call to meet with John Patrick Shanley at his hotel. And the first thing John said to me, I want this to be anamorphic. And I looked around, and the producer wasn't there, and he'd been fired. And so things just happen, and you get lucky. And then, of course, once you're there to shoot, once you're there to work, then you've got to be good, really good, not a little bit good either. I mean, it's very intense and incredibly worrying, and you work. Often you'll work 14, 15, 16 hours a day, 6 days a week.
You started out.
Sorry. What was the most difficult scene to work on this film?
On Joe, I think a lot of the water stuff.
I imagine so.
Yeah, not the exterior. We shot, the stuff in some stuff in Hawaii, and we had some weather disasters there. But just shooting on the big tank, which was 2 stages side by side at the Columbia lot, the old Columbia lot, now the Sony lot. That's tough. That was very tough then. Much easier to do now, because film is so much easier to work with. But we had, if you can imagine the area of this theater, where you're all seated at the ground level, and then imagine it 4 times bigger, all full of water. And then imagine the lighting involved, and the special effects, and the water shoots, and a full-scale yacht floating on this. And then imagine that all the lighting has got to be rigged maybe over a period of a month before you go on the stage. And then imagine finding out that the gaffer, who I didn't know but I had on reputation, was stealing from the company, and I was being told that I had to fire him. Oh my gosh. And me saying, I can't fire him because we would have to shut down for a month. It's your choice. And they said, okay, we'll go on shooting, and we'll arrest him when we're finished.
Did he know he was even being investigated?
No, but I knew all through the film. So
I can imagine the looks during the shooting, like, yeah, he's going down.
I told nobody, but I knew he was a marked man.
Speaking of difficult shoots, I read that the very, very famous shot in Angels in America of Emma Thompson floating ethereally, majestically, was incredibly hard to do from your standpoint. Is that accurate?
Yes, very. Yeah.
So what did it take to pull that off and make it look gauzy yet seamless?
Well, again, it's not just me. What I said was that I had to have smoke. And I went to see a record at the New York Public Library. Of all the major productions on Broadway and off-Broadway, a tape is made of the production for historical purposes, and you can make an appointment and go and see it. And watching that, I realized that what we had to do is build two sets. We had to build a set which was normal size and a set that was 4 times larger. And the producers wanted to kill me because Mike Nichols loved that. And then working with visual effects and putting smoke in, and then working with poor Emma, who's got to basically do Hamlet hanging on a wire.
She's on a bicycle seat, right?
A little bicycle seat. She said she never had sex for about 6 months after this. And it was all very exciting and very, very tough. But I knew I'd succeeded because as we finished the first big take, which ends with "Hail to thee, prophet, the messenger has arrived," is the end of just over 3 hours of film, and that's her line. It was stunning. Everybody was just shocked and quiet. And then Mike Nichols came up to me and kissed me. So I felt really good about that.
You started out as a still photographer. You worked for newspapers.
Yes.
How'd you know you wanted to go into film?
I got lonely. No, really, I did.
Yeah?
I was shooting stuck in a hotel. I was very young.
How old were you?
Shooting for newspapers. I was 19, 18, 17. And I would be at art school, and I'd go off and do assignments, and I'd be stuck in a hotel. I remember once in Zambia, and I had to get my film to the airport. It was kind of dangerous, and had no one to call. There were no cell phones. There were no phones that could get you to your editor or to your news desk or whatever in anything less than 3 days.
Wow.
You know, you can't understand what it's like to work in those kind of conditions, even if they're not specifically dangerous, because you really are solitary, and you've got to deal with it all. And then I got assignments to work in studios 2 days a week, special stills, and I saw the crews working and laughing and, you know, carrying on and marrying each other, and I thought, this looks great. So I went to film school, and that's how I got into it. Yeah.
But in film school, how'd you know you wanted to be a DP versus anything else?
Because everybody wanted to be a director,
Right.
except me. So in film, I think in pictures. I'm not a writer. So it just was natural, and I was used to cameras. I've been shooting and carrying cameras since as long as I could remember. From a very, precocious is the word.
And when, because this was the first film by Shanley, right?
Yes.
When you're working with a first-time director, or maybe even with an experienced director, during pre-production, do you help visualize the shots, the framing, the camera movement?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah, but I mean, there are a lot of directors who feel like, this is my film, so I have to.
I don't work with them.
You don't work with them. Okay. That's a good philosophy.
No, really. No disrespect, but there are some directors who I admire very much for their visual style, for their astonishing ability with sets and design. I just can't work with them because we're just going to have a fight. What's the point? I mean, they are better than me already, so why embarrass myself? I've got to find people who are more interested in performance, in drama, in that side of the work, so that I can do what I want to do.
Yeah. There are a lot of shots in this film where you can clearly see the beams of lights, which is extremely beautiful and extremely hard to show light in the film. How do you do that?
Smoke.
Okay, so everybody's coughing during the shot.
Yeah,
Okay.
where there's smoke, there's Goldblatt.
On bumper stickers and T-shirts from now on.
Emma Thompson wrote that to me.
That's great. What is your favorite film you've shot?
Right now, The Help.
Okay, why?
It was such a collaborative, wonderful experience between the director, first-time director, and myself. We are brothers now, and with all the actors. And the subject matter I felt was dear to my heart. And I gave everything I had to that film. But having said that, I like just about every film I work on it first. Then later you can think about it. Angels in America is probably, I can't beat in terms of subject matter and director. And
Say young Sherlock Holmes.
it just doesn't come out.
Were you surprised by how just ardently people responded to The Help? I mean, it was just a huge hit, did well critically. Were you surprised by that at all?
Pleasantly.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always I've worked on films that have cost $110 million that have made $17 million. And I've worked on much lower budgets that made much more. You didn't know with The Help. You just didn't know. We felt we were doing something pretty extraordinary when we were shooting. We were on wings. We rarely did more than 2 takes.
Wow.
Everyone was perfect. We got through 150 pages of the script in 58 days.
Wow.
It was 110 degrees, 114 degrees. Nobody died. You laugh. It was really something, and then it began to build. And they showed it in Chicago, and people went crazy. But you know, when we did Joe, I felt we were doing something really special too. I felt such a strong vision from John Patrick Shanley. He was such a clear and wonderful, and is a wonderful guy, and he really wanted to do something. I'll give you an idea of what John Patrick Shanley is like. I was sitting beside him, and then the studio publicist came over, and she said, "This is Mr. So-and-so from the New York Times, and he wants to ask you a few questions." And I said to John, "Should I go?" He said, "No, it's all right." And so this journalist sat down and started asking John journalist questions, film stuff. And at some point asked a question about the budget. And the publicist from the studio said, "You can't answer that." And John looked at her and said, "I'm an American, and I can say exactly what I feel, including, you are fired."
Good.
And he fired her on the spot.
So,
This is a passionate man, an ex-Marine, a great writer, and a wonderful playwright. Yeah, it's a good company.
yeah, it's a very old-fashioned movie in a lot of ways, but has a lot of bold themes and ideas going on in it. So, I will. I was going to ask you, so you mentioned that you have never directed a film, but do you want to?
Do I? No.
Yes.
No.
All right. Some people want to. Some people, have that in the back of their mind, like what I really want to do is direct. No?
No. I see what the poor bastards go through.
You know too much. You guys probably have better questions than I do, so please feel free to ask them. I'm not sure what the deal is with microphones. Or do we just shout out? We can do that too. Hello. Hi. Okay. So please raise your hand. These lovely folks will come and find you with a microphone. Is there one in the back? Oh, hi. The person waving at me in the back. We'll get to you soon.
Please do. Okay. Call me later. We'll talk about it. Thank you so much for making this movie. What I'm wondering is why so many of us came into the theater tonight with a question mark after this film instead of I really want to see this film again. Chaz hadn't seen it. I hadn't seen it. And I think the publicity just got it wrong. Why didn't all of us see it when it came out?
Beats me. I'm sorry. I'm of your opinion, but it made its costs, but it wasn't wildly popular, and it wasn't wildly publicized. No.
But you know what, though? I've mentioned to a lot of folks that I was going to be doing this tonight, and they all said, oh, I love Joe versus the Volcano. It's one of my absolute favorites. So it definitely has achieved
Yes. Yeah.
its appreciation over years. Who else? Hi, this one right here.
Last year, our first movie was Metropolis, and the opening scene of this movie with the workers going through and the wheels moving up top, I wonder if that was a tip of the hat to Metropolis or not.
Oh, obviously, yeah, absolutely. We're not subtle either.
But good question.
Good question, yeah, sure, thank you.
Who else do we have out here? Hi, over there on the left, please. On my left.
You could see the light in her eyes very specifically. Did you do that by shining a light so that it would look that way, or was that just accident? Because looking in her eyes, you could see the light coming out of her eyes as if it was done that way.
No, my secret is revealed. It is specific. I admired a director, Carol Rice, a British-Hungarian director, and I wanted to shoot for him once, and I showed him a film of mine that I'd done in England, and he was a courtly, wonderful man, a brilliant editor, brilliant director, and he took me aside, and he took my elbow in a European way and walked me out and said, "You're very good with rooms," which meant that I wasn't very good with faces. He really taught me that although the room is difficult, it's the face that matters. So I'm always anxious that in a dark scene there's a little tick of light, so you can respond as an audience member to the emotion that's happening in the face, and that helps. I feel that I rather overdid it with Meg in that scene looking today, and if I could just get into the digital suite and I could fix it in 5 minutes, but I don't think they'll give me the chance.
Are you a perfectionist? Are you hard on yourself?
Yes, sure.
I appreciate that. Okay, we have to get going pretty soon. Any more questions out there in the vast
Yes,
beyond?
panel,
Hello,
to
sir.
your right. Way to your right, panel, by the wall.
I got you, sir. Do I think the title scene you were saying?
Do you think the title sank the movie? I mean, Empire Strikes Back, Gone with the Wind, Joe versus the Volcano.
Well, maybe, but it's got nothing to do with me. Oh, why? Oh, gosh. There are wonderful movies that sink without trace over and over again. I worked on about 25 of them. I don't know. Movie executives are sometimes entirely puzzled. They don't know why the public just doesn't turn up. They've got the actors, got everything. It's something to do, what's that horrible phrase, zeitgeist? I don't even know what it really means, but it's got to do with, does the movie click with the mood of the time? When I did Charlie Wilson's Wall, Mike Nichols, halfway through the film, realized that it would never be seen if it became as serious as the script, as serious as the events, as serious as the book that it was taken from. He knew it would die because the country was just in agony about what was happening. And so he lightened the whole thing up. And so then perhaps the critics didn't take him seriously, but that film was the only film about war that year that made money.
Yeah, and then this film is kind of difficult to put in a box,
Yeah.
to figure out. I mean, it starts with a very heavy atmosphere, then it lights up, and then it gets heavy again because it's going to die. So it's a difficult film to categorize.
It's not a formula film.
Yes.
No.
All right, I think we have to go. Is there one more question out there, maybe? Hi, right there. Thank you.
Hi.
It's off.
Oh, hello. I was wondering if you have an opinion on James Cameron and Peter Jackson's push to move to 48 frames per second rather than 24 frames. And I was wondering,
Does James Cameron want to do that too?
he's been encouraging a lot of people
Yeah,
to say
yeah.
that
With Doug
they're
Trump,
rebel.
it's an old story. Doug Trumbull, the great visual effects artist, has been pushing to do 48 frames, 60 frames, and I've seen it on large screens. It looks like 3D, entirely like 3D, but without the glasses. It is absolutely beautiful. It works wonderfully. You can't judge it on the basis of hearsay, as we are today from this little preview that they did with The Hobbit. But yeah, sure, 48 frames. And now it's not difficult. You do a little firmware upgrade to a digital projector and you can do it. It was financially impossible when you had to change every projector in the world. But now it's really quite easy, and I hope it really happens. After all, we're no longer shooting expensive film, we're shooting cheap digital media to record on. It's very cheap. So yeah, it would be great. I can't wait.
Thank you guys so much for coming. Thanks to you for coming. It was such a blast talking to you. Thank you for coming. Thanks. Bye.